Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's BBQ, and on today's video, I'm going to be cooking up a subscriber submitted sausage recipe called the East Texas 60/40 sausage. Stay tuned. All right, let's get started on this East Texas 60/40 sausage. Now I do have a brisket flat here. Still has all of the fat on it, so I'm going to trim this up and I'll tell you guys exactly how much meat I'm going to have to make these sausages. Now, as the title says, this is a 60/40 sausage recipe. But when I spoke to the subscriber, and we're just going to call him by his first name, Art, he told me that they do call it the 60/40 sausage, although it is a 50/50 sausage recipe, which means it's 50% beef and 50% pork. So when I still had my food truck, I received a phone call, and it was Art, and he said, "Hey, sorry for calling you. You know, I'm sure you get a lot of calls. Man, this knife needs to be sharpened." So Art and I were talking for a good while on the phone, and he tells me that he's a sausage maker as well, and I said, "Oh, cool." And he says, "Hey, I want to share a very special recipe with you." And that's when he told me about the 60/40 sausage. So I gave him my mailing information. He wrote it down and mailed it to me. And this was about a year ago, over a year ago now. Now I did try to get a hold of Art a couple of times because I had some questions on the recipe, but I can't seem to get a hold of him. I've got his phone number, but I'm just gonna have to go with the information that he wrote down on the recipe. So I'm just trimming the excess fat off of this brisket flat right here. And this was a pretty big brisket flat. But once I've got all the meat trimmed up or cubed up, I'll let you guys know exactly how much brisket I have, then how much pork butt I have, but we are gonna end up with a 50/50 mixture. All right, that looks good right there. I'm just gonna cube this up. All right, so I've got the brisket all cubed up and I've got it on my meat scale right here. And I'm starting with 7.5 pounds of brisket. So I'm gonna cube up 7.5 pounds of pork butt. All right, so here's my 7.5 pound boneless pork butt. And again, I'm just gonna cube this up. Same process, just cut this down into cubes, small enough to fit down the throat of your grinder. We're not trimming any fat off of this pork butt. All right, so I've got my 15 pounds of meat right here, 7.5 pounds of brisket, and 7.5 pounds of pork butt. I'm gonna toss this in my freezer for about an hour. Meanwhile, I'm gonna weigh out the ingredients. All right, I've got my hopper loaded, and as always, you never wanna start your grinder dry, so make sure you drop some pieces of meat down into your grinder. Just like that. And I'm using a foot pedal to operate my grinder. All right, here we go. All right, and just like that, this meat 1.5 horsepower grinder made quick work of this meat. If you guys are interested in getting any sausage making equipment from meat, check them out at the link below and get yourself a nice discount. All right, so I've got the 15 pounds of meat all ground up. Now it's time to add the ingredients to the 60/40 East Texas sausage. So we're starting with some kosher salt, some black pepper, garlic powder, red pepper flake, and our curing salt. I will be leaving the measurements to this recipe down inside the description box, so make sure you check that out, and you guys will be happy to know that it will be in ounces. So I'm going to add about half a cup of ice cold water. Give this a good mix. Now this recipe does not call for any binder. I would normally use milk powder as a binder, but again, this recipe does not call for a binder. So just mix this up really good. So I was going to break out my mixer, but I figured since this is only 15 pounds of meat, I can do this the old school way and do it by hand. And this meat is ice cold, and that's what you want. Anytime that you're making sausage, you got to keep your meat nice and cold. All right, I'm adding another 1/4 cup of water. So this 60/40 East Texas sausage is an old school sausage recipe, and I got to tell you, the ingredients are simple. but this already smells amazing, and I cannot wait to taste the final product. All right, so keep mixing your sausage until you have some really nice protein extraction, and you have a simple gauge at your fingertips to know when this is ready to be cased, and I'll show you guys that here in a minute. All right, guys, this is just about ready, and let me show you guys that gauge that I mentioned that's at your fingertips. It is your fingertips. Just pick up some of the sausage, and when it sticks to your glove or your hand like this, it is ready. See that? That is perfect. So I'm gonna pop this in my fridge for about another hour, then I'll bring you guys back and we'll case these up. All right, so I'm getting ready to case these sausages, but I did want to let you guys know that I spoke to Arthur over the phone. Now, Arthur was a gentleman that sent me this recipe, and I've been trying to reach him for the past couple days. Finally got a hold of him, and I had a couple of questions for him. So one of the questions that I had for Arthur was the actual name of the sausage. Now, as I mentioned earlier, he called it the 6040 on the conversation that we had over a year ago, and he did confirm that the name of the sausage is the 6040 sausage, even though the mix is 50-50, 50% beef, 50% pork. Arthur also let me know that a lot of old school sausage makers are using the 60-40 mix, so you can use either 60% beef, 40% pork, or 50% beef and 50% pork. So a real quick story that Arthur told me was that back in the 70s, he got out of the military and he started working at a processing plant where they were making these sausages, and that's where he learned to make sausage, which I thought was really cool. So this recipe right here is probably 60 years old, if not older. So the second question that I had for Arthur was, how do I tie up these sausages? And he did tell me that you want to use butcher's twine, and you want to end up with a teardrop shape or a horseshoe shape. So that's what I'm going to be doing. All right, so I just took the meat out of the fridge, and I did add 1 more cup of water to this. It just felt a little too tight, and that extra cup of water really loosened it up, so that's perfect. So let's go ahead and stuff our container right here. Make sure you pack it in really nice and tight so you don't have any air pockets. All right, let me load up this canister. All right, let's install the horn to our stuffer. All right, we want the sausage mixture to come up to the tip right here. All right, and there it is. All right, so I've got my preloaded casing. Now these are available through PS Seasoning, along with all of the spices that I'm using for this recipe. Make sure you guys check them out and get yourself a nice discount when using the link down below in the description box. Look at that, went on super simple. All right, I'm gonna be tying a knot on this end, but we're gonna be using the butcher's twine to tie up our sausages here in a minute. Nice and tight, just like that. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna prick these sausages. Got a couple of air pockets. Nothing too crazy. All right, guys, so I've already tied up a couple of sausage links, and I want to tell you that this is a lot of work. There's probably an easy way to do this, but let me show you guys how I did it, okay? I'm measuring out these 16 inches, more or less. They don't have to be perfect, okay? Then I'm pushing the sausage inside the link to one side, okay? Just like that. And I'm cutting the casing right here, all right? So now you have this end right here. And what I do is just push that sausage back a little bit with your fingers, just like that. And I have a piece of butcher's twine, and I start my knot just like this. Just make a loop, pass the casing through the loop right there, and get it really nice and tight. Okay, do a double knot. Just like that. Do the same thing on the other side. There's our loose casing right there. Start your knot. Pass the casing through your knot and cinch it down. Make a double knot again. Just like that. Grab both ends of your twine and do a double knot here too. Just like that, like you're tying your shoes. Just do it twice. And there you have it. Again, there's probably an easy way to do this, but this works for me. I'm gonna do the rest of these and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got all the sausages tied up and I do have different lengths. Here's a short one, here's a medium-sized one, and here's a long one right here. And that's the beauty of making sausage at home. You can kind of make them different sizes. They don't all have to be exact. So at this point, I'm gonna toss these in my fridge overnight, let that cure convert, and I'll see you guys then. Stay tuned. All right, and just like that, it's the very next day. I've got my Bison Red Dog running at 150 degrees. Now, Art did recommend to smoke these sausages at 150 degrees until they hit about 155 degrees internal. Then we got to cool them down. So let's load up our sausages. Now, if you notice, I did remove the top grate along with the bottom grate because we're going to be hanging these sausages the old school way. And I'm using a small split of post oak to maintain that 150 degree temperature. Now, if there's any mechanics watching, watch closely and look what I'm using here. I had to improvise. Now if you look closely, you'll notice that those are 3/8 extensions that I'm using to hang these sausages. I'm sorry I don't have a piece of rebar or an old broomstick that I could have used, so I had to improvise. I've got a toolbox full of 3/8 extensions and they work perfectly, and yes, I did wash them. I think the mechanics watching this video will get a kick out of that. All right, so at this point, I'm going to close the door. We're going to be smoking these sausages for 2 hours at 150 degrees, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so it's been 2 hours since we loaded up our sausages. Now, the temperature has been running between 125 and 150 degrees, and I did add another extension just to separate the sausages a bit because they were kind of white where they were touching, so I separated them a little bit more, and I'm getting some nice even color, nice and red color. Look at that. There you go. You have a close-up of that really nice reddish color that's developing on our sausages. So I'm going to smoke these at 150 degrees for another hour. Then I'm slowly going to crank the temperature up to 175 till the internal temperature gets to 155. Then I'll pull them off and I'll see you guys inside. All right, so I just pulled the sausages off and the total cook time was 4.5 hours. Again, they reached 155 degrees internal. So I just have some water right here. I'm going to ice it down. Check these out. Does that look good or what? Just going to cool them down in the ice. Just like that. So at this point, I'm just going to let these sausages cool down completely. I'm going to increase the temperature on the smoker to 250 degrees. I'm going to grab a couple of these, toss them back in the smoker, and warm them up until the internal hits 150 degrees. Once that happens, I'll bring you guys back. We'll cut it into them and see how they taste. Stay tuned. All right, and just like that, these sausages are ready. They went back on the smoker at 250 degrees for about 30 minutes or so. And check these out, glistening, beautiful looking sausages, nice red color. Let's slice into one of these bad boys. I think this is the one right here. Now these are still really hot. Look at that. Look at that texture, nice and juicy. Oh yeah, really good adhesion to that casing. Man, I cannot wait to give these bad boys a try. All right, let's give these old school Texas sausages a try. Again, call it the 50-50 or the 60-40. And look at that, nice and juicy. It is dripping, beautiful color. First, I'm gonna bite into it. We're gonna check that snappiness of the casing. Here we go. You know, this is such a simple recipe. That red pepper flake really gives these sausages an amazing flavor. That post oak wood. This is amazing. Man, I gotta tell you, that sausage has a really nice kick to it. Nothing too crazy, again, because of that red pepper flake, but it's so good. Now I'm gonna try this the way they eat these out in East Texas, on a cracker with some hot sauce, just a little bit. Look at that. So the number one question I always get when I make a sausage video is, why do I cook the sausages, pull them out, ice them down, and then recook them? I'll explain that. So one thing you'll have to remember is that we're cooking these sausages at such a low temperature, in this case 150 degrees. Now, yes, the sausage is edible. You can eat it. It's going to be perfectly safe the first time around. But I have found that once you cool them down, it's going to bring the temperature down inside the sausage. Once you put them back inside the smoker at a higher temperature, 250 degrees, that casing gets nice and crispy, giving you guys a really good pop on your sausages. So if you guys are making sausages and your casing comes out a little bit chewy, try this process. Trust me, it works. Again, you're cooking at a higher temperature, getting that casing nice and crispy. And Mr. Art, I want to thank you for sharing this recipe, not just with me, but with the entire world. I hope you guys enjoyed this old school Texas sausage recipe. Don't forget to check out PS Seasoning and meetyourmaker.com and get your sausage making supplies and seasonings. If this is your first time to my channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit BBQ. See ya.